One of the most iconic units of Age of Empires 2 is the Teutonic Knight. Many of us have very fond memories of watching these juggernauts survive a huge amount of punishment. These nearly invincible characteristics of the Teutonic Knight has earned it the nickname of the medieval Chuck Norris. However, you may notice that you don't often see them in that much expert games. In this video, I'll go over the strengths and weaknesses of this unit to show why they may not be used that much, but also to show you how to make them shine. To start off, the Teutonic Knight is classified as an infantry unit as well as a unique unit. When fully upgraded, the elite version has a whopping 100 HP, 21 attack, 13 melee armor, and 6 pierce armor. They also have bonus attack of +4 versus buildings and +4 versus eagles. That's a very hefty package. They get all this for a cost of 85 food and 40 gold, with a creation time of 12 seconds and a little bit slower attack rate than the Paladin, which is the same as heavy cannons. Now note, however, that they are very slow, with a base move speed of 0.7. Also notice that they are far more expensive than both champions and halberdiers. However, they are not nearly as gold intensive as cavalry or siege, and it packs quite an amazing punch with huge attack, good HP for an infantry unit, and amazing melee armor. These high stats give the Teutonic Knight some very important strengths. First, when looking at the effects of melee armor, we can see that they receive only 5 damage per shot from paladins, taking 20 hits to kill. On the other hand, the elite Teutonic Knight deals 16 damage per shot versus the Paladin, taking only 12 hits to kill that unit. This means that even though they cost less than a Paladin, they win with 40% of their HP left in a one-on-one fight. Versus the champion, we see a similar story, taking 25 hits to be killed, but only 5 hits to kill the champion. This means they obviously kill champions in equal numbers, but they also do so cost efficiently. Halberdiers, on the other hand, only deal 1 damage per shot to the elite Teutonic Knight, taking 100 hits to kill it, whereas on the other hand, the Teutonic Knights kill the Halberdiers in only 4 hits. This means they absolutely destroy Halbs. Basically, I list these examples to show that they deal with enemy infantry and cavalry very well. They also work very well along with siege, where being so slow isn't that much of a problem. As far as unique units go, they counter all melee unique units if they can reach them, with the exception of Jaguar Warriors, Samurai, and maybe Elite Cataphracts, who all have bonus damage that melts through the elite Teutonic Knight's melee armor. Even though they are trained from castles, it happens pretty quickly, so they can defend castles from oncoming rams, and they can be amassed with no major difficulty with just 3 or so castles. You oftentimes hear that elite Teutonic Knights have very low pierce armor, but in reality that's not true, having the same pierce armor as a cavalier. This means they also work very well versus skirmishers, making them an all-round trash unit killer. So basically, for a quick recap, they're a unit with amazing stats that counter a lot of units. And so, why did I say earlier that they're not used that much? Well, they have one huge and glaring weakness. And this is that they are very slow. Meaning, even though the Teutonic Knight counters several units, such as cavalry, hussars, or eagles in a straight-up fight, in reality, a good player will just run around you and kill the Teuton player's eco. Also, even though they have the same pierce armor as a cavalier, they're so slow that archer units will simply be able to micro back and forth, absolutely destroying them. This means they're not a very viable unit in random match play, where crossbows and arbalests are seen very often. When combined with their relatively high cost for an infantry unit, their slowness means that monks will also be an effective counter versus them. And they're so slow that well-microed siege will deal with them as well. I'm starting to see why they're not used that much in competitive RM play. As far as unique unit counters go, basically, if the unit deals pierce damage, it'll work pretty well versus the Teutonic Knight. And so, this is the end of the video. Teutonic Knights just aren't that great of a unit. Well, not exactly, because while they don't work that well in random match, in deathmatch they actually shine, because archers and monks aren't very viable units in deathmatch, because oftentimes onagers and paladins will destroy these units. Elite Teutonic Knights are very powerful and very tough, which makes them very population efficient, and as such in deathmatch games they are a stellar unit to use for the Teutons. Now, when trying to compare the Elite Teutonic Knight to other units in the Teuton army, there's not really anything similar to compare to, because no infantry units are like the Elite Teutonic Knight. However, there are a few units that fulfill the same general roles that you may have to choose between. Let's start with Halberdiers. Both Halbs and Teutonic Knights make for a very great meat shield for siege weapons because they deal with cavalry very well. The Teutonic Knight could be seen as being a little bit worse because in mass they don't kill paladins quite as quickly, so paladins could still snipe siege. They're also not created from a barracks, so it takes time to get, and they're a lot more expensive than Halbs. However, the Elite Teutonic Knight is the more well-rounded unit because it deals with champions, huskarls, and eagle warriors, which halberdiers, by the way, do not, and in equal numbers with the halberdiers, they deal with paladins far better. I don't think that Elite Teutonic Knights fully replace halberdiers versus paladins, but in almost all other situations, the Elite Teutonic Knight will be better at defending siege. Another unit you might compare them to are hand cannoneers. This is because, in theory, they're both similar because they both cost food and gold, they both deal with infantry well, but not archers and not siege. However, in a real game, hand cannoneers are far weaker in general, with maybe 30% of the HP, and especially weaker to paladins. Therefore, it is far less population efficient, and so in deathmatch games at least, the Elite Teutonic Knight is objectively better in just about every single situation. When compared with champions, Elite Teutonic Knights simply have better stats. Yes, they are more expensive, they're not from the barracks, and they might be a tad weaker to siege because they are slower, but not really a problem in a real game because you'll have other units to fix these problems. I think one of the most interesting comparisons is with the Heavy Scorpion. This is because they both deal with masses of units, and they both work as good support units. However, Heavy Scorpions die to paladins, but itself is the best counter to large numbers of Elite Teutonic Knights because the Elite Teutonic Knight is so slow and the Heavy Scorpion deals pierce damage. I'd say if the enemy is going for large numbers of infantry, Teutons should go for both Heavy Scorpions and Elite Teutonic Knights, because while they both counter mostly the same units, they do so in vastly different ways. In closing, the Teutonic Knight is a fan-favorite unit, but because they're weak to archers and monks, they're not really seen that much in competitive RM play. However, in deathmatch, neither of these units work really well, so it's not so easy to hard counter the Elite Teutonic Knight anymore. Because of this, they're a very viable unit for Teutons in deathmatch, being a population-efficient quasi-replacement to Halbs, and they complement siege very well. In Teuton Wars, I often see a counter-triangle of Paladins, Halbs and Elite Teutonic Knights, and Heavy Scorpions with Onagers. While many civs are better at deathmatch than Teutons, the Teutonic Knight is a very powerful unit for this game mode, and if you like to use this unit but you also like to win, maybe you might want to give deathmatch a try. Anyways, thanks a whole lot for watching, and I'll see ya in the next one.